Good morning, everybody. That's 10:05, so we'll crack on. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I hope you can hear and that you can see me okay. I'm sure Jenny will keep me right. Okay, so my name is Stephen Mark Williams. I am the Executive Director of ETP for my sins. And we are here to open the call for this year's ETP Energy Industry Doctorate Programme. I hope that you can see the screen. We have a very special guest with us, who is Ragne Lowe from the Scottish Government. So Ragne, if you would like to introduce yourself, please.
Yes, I will do. Sorry, I'm struggling to connect my headphones in. Give me a second.
No problem.
Right, I think that's working now, is it?
Oh, yes, I can hear you fine, Ragne.
Good, that's good, because there was feedback before, sorry. Yes, Ragne Lowe, I am Deputy Director for Onshore Electricity Strategy and Energy Consents in the Directorate for Energy and Climate Change in the Scottish Government. And part of my team's role is as sponsor of various bits of ETP activity on behalf of the Scottish Government, and part of our role is also to work on and deliver the final energy strategy and just transition plans, which is highly relevant. So good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ragne. I was just wondering, are you okay to be here for the rest of the meeting, or would you actually like to present your stuff now? And
no, I can be here. I'll slot in at the right time. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Okay, excellent. So very good. Right then. So very pleasure to have Ragne here. So very important stuff. Okay, so most important thing then is the deadline, 12 noon 30, the 31st of August. Okay, so hopefully you have all this in your diaries. What I'd like you to do as well then is using the chat. Can you just say hello to me by putting your name in so that we know who you are and we know who's here? I mean, I can kind of see you on the list, but that would be great. So I'm not actually very used to using this. So I'm going to put me in there. I can actually spell it correctly. That's great. So if I could see everybody else, if you can put your name in the chat or put something like that, just saying hello, so that I know that you know how to use the chat. Mainly, that's what this is about. I tend to use Zoom, so this is a bit different. Hello, Vasily and Maurizio from Strathclyde. Vasily from Heriot Watt. Rebecca, hi, and Nazir, hi, and of course Neil know very well. Okay, hello everybody. Right, excellent. So by the end of today, I hope that you will understand how this process works and you will have all your questions answered. So please feel free to use your raise hand, which you should find across the top. And I think what happens if you do that, you automatically come to the top of my pile so that I know that the hand has been raised. Okay, so excellent. So just ask any questions as we go through. So just to remind you, ETP is 14 universities, 14 partner universities. So any researcher essentially can apply from any of these 14 universities into this program. Okay, so there'll be hundreds of you essentially, and across 12 and a half themes. And I'll explain the half in a minute. But those are the themes. So, you know, it's not just about renewable energy, it's across any energy theme. Transition from oil and gas, we don't receive so many from these days, but you can see all the themes there. You'll find more information on our website. Energy and water is an interesting one. Hopefully you will all be aware now that we have an energy and water program called HNIP, Hydro Nation Energy Innovation Program, funded by the Scottish Government, actually Barry Gregg at Scottish Government. And when I say it's half a theme, when we talk about energy and water, it's very specifically things like hydro or run of river or energy scavenging from the water supply. So it's kind of things like that. If you're unclear about exactly what's covered by it, please contact us. But certainly very happy to receive applications from that theme. So Energy Industry Doctorate Programme, funded by the Scottish Government and by ETP partner universities, and also eventually by industrial sponsors. And it funds projects of 3 to 3.5 years, kind of modelled on the EBSERT model of a PhD. So far, we have funded 143 doctorates across all themes, and which is leveraged in £4.1 million of industrial sponsorship. You can find a full list of projects on the ETP website, so all of those are on the ETP website. You go and have a look to see the kind of stuff that's been done up to now. So the current call, along the same lines as previous calls, so no difference to this one. I know there was a bit of discussion about having a second pathway for SMEs and maybe increasing the amount of funding, but because of the limited amount of funding we have for this call, we've not been able to do that. But so it's exactly the same as previous calls. So we have 5 grants available of up to 30k. So we have 150k, in other words. It is competitive. It's open to all researchers with limits across ETP partner HEIs, and open to all ETP thematic research areas, as I just said. One of the things you will know about it is that there has to be a co-supervisor and a partner ETP institution, which has to be stated on the application form, and also requires industrial sponsorship. If you don't have an industrial sponsor, then we can certainly help you to find one if you approach us. And the student can be any student, any location, and the industrial sponsor can be any sponsor, any location, any size. I say that because sometimes people get confused between that and the innovation programs that we run, which tend to be Scottish based and aimed primarily at SMEs. This program is aimed at any company, any size, any location, anywhere. Okay, and the same for the students. They can be, international, UK or European, it doesn't matter. It's actually the supervisor who gets funded, it's not the student. So hopefully you'll see that this is the what the application form looks like, as you will see. So the application form is available on the ETP website. The application needs to be submitted by your ETP board member of your host institution. So for example, I can see Glasgow Uni, so that would be Gioia Falcone at Glasgow. If you're looking for Scottish Association Marine Science, if that's in the UHI, that would be Ben Wilson. If that's at St Andrews, then that would be Tom Brown. So you would need to find out who the board member for your host institution, because the board member needs to submit the application. It must be accompanied by letter of support from your board member, 2 statements. Now this is a bit odd, but maybe that both of the supervisors meet your own regulations for PhD supervision. That's because in the past we've had some applications submitted by researchers who really weren't of the level required for supervision, and especially as they had a limited funding and they were going to be gone in 2 years. Letter of support from the co-supervisor in the other institution. Letter of support from the industrial sponsor, of course, very important. Student CV if already identified, although the student CV is not assessed. All right, so you'll find a list of these anyway on the application form. All right, so you don't necessarily need to write this down. So the timeline. So today we have our webinar. The draft deadline, 12th of noon, 31st of July, and I'll explain a bit more about that later. Submission, as I said, 12 noon, 31st of August. The panel meets on the 11th of September, which will include Ragne. And the offers, the board ratification offers will be end of September, and the project starts by the 29th of February. What we mean by that is that the invoice and the evidence of student registration must be received by the 29th of February 2024. The student doesn't have to have started by then, but they do need to have been registered by then, because we need to show evidence that they are essentially on the course. Okay. As I said, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and I'll answer as we go through. So what do we mean by draft application? Well, we actually started this in the last call last year with more or less success, because we called it then the expression of interest, which really wasn't what it was. So we renamed it. It's called draft application. So by 12 noon, Monday, the 31st, July 2023, essentially, if you submit a draft application on the template, on the usual draft on the template to me, I will look at it and I will give you some feedback, okay, which may help you with your final application. Won't necessarily mean that the final application will be approved, because that's not up to me, but I can help you. But this step is not compulsory. I know that last year, actually, the Monday, the 31st of July was used by some researchers and some institutions as the trigger to actually start writing the application. So anyway, I hope that it's useful in some way. So the funding is funded on a third model, grants up to 30k, as we said, doesn't have to be 30k, up to 30k. And the balance has to be split between the host institution and an industrial sponsor. For example, if it's a 75k PhD, then this is what you get. So just also to clarify is that because of the way that it's funded, when you are awarded your grant, we will pay all of your grant up front. Okay, and then it can't be altered. We can't give you more because, for example, as happened last year, costs increased because stipends increased. So that's exactly what you will get, will be what you asked for and what we give you, assuming that you're successful. Grants are paid at the start, presentation of invoice and evidence of student registration. And they must be received by 29th of February 2024 so that we can then make our claim on the Scottish Government, and the Scottish Government have the time for them to then respond to our claim, because remember that the Scottish Government have 1 year budget, so they actually have to be completed within that 1 year. In other words, by the end of the financial year, 31st of March 2024, which is why this is the timetables this way. So just to recap supervision, the PhD must be co-supervised by an academic from a partner ETP institution, must provide a letter of support. The industrial sponsor must also provide a supervisor, because for me, this is about the student experience. The student has a better experience if they have good, solid engagement with an industrial sponsor so that they can see the impact of their research and they can channel and they can target their research to the right areas. And it is a substantial part as well of the assessment. As I said, normally it's expected that nominated supervisors will be permanent full-time employees of the university. That's why we ask your university to confirm that that is indeed the case for the supervisors. So also what we would be beneficial and what we would like is if the co-supervisor was actually in a different department at least, and faculty if possible, because we're looking for cross collaboration, interdisciplinarity. So that would certainly help your application if you could demonstrate that. Okay, but it's not compulsory. Students, as I mentioned, can be any nationality. The level of funding does not change, so there is not an international level of funding. It's up to 30k and that's it. Okay, should have a first or 2-1 relevant master degree, also acceptable. Should be registered, as I mentioned, underlined, registered with the host university by the 29th of February 2024. The industrial sponsor required for the PhD to collaborate, and underline any size, any location, and any type, actually. We say industrial, but any kind of enterprise. And that includes councils, includes governments, includes trusts. Okay? As long as they can demonstrate impact. Must provide approximately a third of the cost of the PhD, which must be demonstrated on the application form, and must provide a co-supervisor to the student and a letter of support. Okay, so the letter of support is very important. The panel read these very carefully, so it demonstrates not only the support that the industrial sponsor is going to give, but also how this research will impact the wider base. It's not just about that company, and I think a lot of applications fail on this point. So IP, now this is also an important point. ETP does not take any IP. We not hold that IP at all of any kind for any program. So the existing IP remain the property of the host university to then decide what to do with industrial sponsor. Whatever relationship you have with industrial sponsor, whatever contract you come up with, that's up to you. We take no interest. So all project IP shall be property of and vest in the host university. However, because the Scottish Government fund this project, and if you like, in return for the generous funding that they give us, there is a clause which has to be inserted and is inserted in our contract, and also needs to be cascaded down to any other contracts, which is this. So again, you will find this, I think, on the application form, so you don't need to write it down, but essentially it grants the government access to any foreground IP. Okay, now we haven't had a problem with this in the past, and it shouldn't be a problem in the future, because it's just a grant to grant access, and that's part of the agreement that you will enter into if you agree to a grant if you're successful. In project commitments, so if you are successful and you have an ETP project, I need to be invited to, and these things are things that get forgotten once the project's up and running. I need to be invited to start at meeting to make sure that all the elements are in place and that the student's happy. I must be kept informed of all changes, this, that, and the other. Okay, as if I was part of the project. And also, depending on the institute's periodic formal reviews, we need copies of those. So different universities have different ways of doing their reviews, but we need copies of the reviews. And the student has certain commitments on them. They need to attend the annual conference and any other workshops that we deem necessary for them to take during the 3.5 years of their project. The assessments will be done on 4 criteria, as they have been done for as long as I've been here. So they're marked out of 30. It's very simple, that it supports the themes of the Scottish Government's energy strategy, which Ragne will highlight right now, 5 marks. Driven by industry, 10 marks. Industrial letter of support, important here. Academic quality, 10 marks. Promotes ETP mission and objective, so it's a strategic framework which you can find on the ETP website, 5 marks. Each criterion is marked independently, then the marks aggregate. Very simple. I think there are 6 or 7 people on the board, on the panel. They each mark each application according to these 4 criterion, and the marks aggregated. The panel then meets and then decides according to the marks which ones it's going to approve and which ones it's going to reject. Not necessarily just on marks, so there might be individual items, individual reasons why we might want to approve one and reject another, but that will be made explicit. But generally speaking, it's down to this marking criteria, so it's very clear. Assessment panel include a representative from the Scottish Government. So basically, there's 4 academics, including myself. Professor Sir Jude MacDonald is the chair, and Ragne will sit on there as representative of the Scottish Government. So each of those people, apart from the chair, marks each of the applications according to those criteria. So if we go through the actual application form itself, then first of all, there's a project abstract. This is not assessed, but it is used in marketing material and promoting the projects that ETP support. So it is quite important. And also, to be honest, I find these aren't particularly well written, but hey ho, it's essentially a 100-word elevator pitch used in promotional material, describes the challenge and how the challenge is going to be met. Again, project description, this is not assessed, but it gives a lot of the background information about what the project actually is. So again, so it helps us as assessors understand what the proposal is, but it is not assessed. As you can see here, you see show detail and work packages if there are going to be work packages, but it helps to provide context. Remember that the whole application should not be more than 7 pages, so we're not asking for reams and reams. Often, quite frankly, you could actually write a decent proposal with only 3 pages if you actually get it right. I mean, normally the more words you use, it's because it's not clear. Supports the themes of the Scottish Government's energy strategy. So demonstrate how your project will support this. And notwithstanding the above, you should refer to the latest policy documents that affect your own theme or the thematic area in which you are connecting your project to. Of course, there's a draft strategy right now. So you need to demonstrate how your project aligns with one or more of these areas using all the policy papers and policy statements and so on that are out there. And so right now I'm going to pass over to Ragne, who is going to provide a bit more context and a bit more meat on the bones. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. And look, we have the real person in front of us. So Ragne, please, over to you.
Real but virtual. Yes, live at least. Yeah, so I trust that many of you will be pretty familiar with the draft energy strategy and just transition plan, so I won't rehash it in detail, but just to, I suppose, put a bit of a gloss on it in terms of where we see the really important bits of energy policy for the Scottish Government. So clearly, deployment of zero carbon and renewable technologies is a major objective of our energy strategy for the purposes of mitigating climate change and building growth sectors in the Scottish economy. I think that the other really important thing to emphasise here is that the energy strategy is also an economic policy document. It is about a just transition for Scotland's energy sector, particularly as oil and gas becomes less important and we ramp up renewables, hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, and other low carbon and renewable technologies. So just to emphasize really the importance of supply chain, jobs, economic opportunity arising as a result of the energy transition, that is really critical in terms of the Scottish Government's objectives for the energy transition, and hopefully permeates the draft energy strategy. I think the final strategy, which we will work on once we've had an opportunity to look at the very large number, in fact, of consultation responses that we've received. We received well in excess of 1,000, some of which are as a result of an e-campaign, but nevertheless a large number of responses. And we'll be looking at all of those and the stakeholder engagement that we did in the run-up to the draft publication, and also subsequently to kind of develop the final. But the final will also major on economic objectives and link the energy strategy really closely into both the just transition for net zero, and then also the National Strategy for Economic Transformation, which is the sort of other really important Scottish Government policy document in this space. So probably worth a quick look at that, the NSET, as we call it, the National Strategy for Economic Transformation, which isn't about energy explicitly, or but nevertheless sets the kind of framework for our thinking on economic growth and sustainable development and jobs. So those are the two things to flag, I guess. One is probably more obvious around deployment and accelerating the net zero energy transition in sort of technical terms. And then the other is around the economic opportunities and maximising those. So projects that can speak to that aspect of our ambitions will be important. So I hope some applications will come forward that kind of can do that. Stephen, Mark, is there anything else you would like me to say about? I mean, I can point to other more specific sort of technology by technology documents that we have. We obviously have a hydrogen strategy and action plan. There are policy documents galore on offshore wind and on onshore wind, and I can, if people would like to get in touch, we can provide a bit more detail on other things such as batteries and storage and so on, where we could potentially provide a bit more detailed information.
Okay, thank you, Ragne. I think that's fine. I think as long as the application refers to the relevant Scottish Government policy document or statement, I think then they would be happy. I think thank you for that clarification. I think that what you're saying then about economic policy is not just about the deployment of technologies, but it's about the impact that those positive impact that those technologies can have. I think that's an important thing to pull out of applications, and I think when we as ETP are asking, for example, for a co-supervisor in a different university who can also be maybe within social sciences, if it's kind of technology orientated, I think that's just to get a more rounded application that speaks into what you're just talking about there, about the economic opportunities, supply chains and jobs, that needs to be brought out within the application. Okay, there's just a couple of things. So first of all, does anybody actually want to ask Ragne any questions now? So please raise your hand. I'm sure Ragne would be pleased to answer anything if you have anything specific. No, okay. Well, in that case, what I'll just say is one of the questions here from Rachel. Hi, Rachel. Do proposals need to address both, or can they tackle one or other? So I think we mean deployment / economic policy document. I'll let you answer that, Ragne, if you want to, or shall I do that?
Well, I guess it's for ETP to take a view on that, but yes, just to say we would welcome a mix, if possible, or at least for some of the applications to speak to that economic imperative.
Yep. I would say you can't have one without the other, because why are you doing the technological development? You're only developing technology for the benefit of the wider society. So, in my view, is that you need to address both, because what's the point of doing one or the other? I think, and technology in its really broadest sense, because even if you're looking at societal issues, we're talking about kind of technology in order to solve those issues. So I think that generally speaking, the applications would have both in them. There's also a question from Matt. Sorry, this is around supervision. Okay, so supervision, we need two formal supervisors, one from the institute itself and one from the co-institute. Obviously, as mentioned, most institutions actually have a secondary supervisor, but we don't need to know whether they do or not. That's not part of the application. Okay, so there may be 3 supervisors, and there may be 2 in the host institution, but we only need to know from the lead supervisor in the institution and the host institution, and another co-supervisor in the co-institution. And the question from Matt, so there is no funding for the supervisor at the host institution, at the non-host institution. Okay, it does fit squarely within the host uni, and so no, there is no funding. It is essentially expected that the co-supervisor should see this as a good thing to do, and they should do it pro bono, essentially. Okay, right. In that case, I will move on then. Thank you very much for that, Ragne. And I will now continue to share my screen if this still works. So hopefully now you can see the, hopefully you've got that. So hopefully you can anyway see my slides again. Maybe you can't. Right, demand driven by industry. So this is where we need to know that the impact of the research is not just about that company or that industrial that's funding the research, but how it's going to affect it more widely. Okay, what is going to be the impact of it? So the letter of support from the industry partner will support this section. Demonstrate how the demand is driven by the wider energy sector, not just the industry partner, and that it has significant knowledge exchange potential. In fact, you know, that there could be ongoing, or there is, if you like, parallel collaborative activity between the institution and that industrial partner or wider industry, that it isn't just limited to that specific project. And as mentioned, the potential for industry, jobs, turnover, and wider societies, that brings in this bit about the societal impact. So that's why I'm saying, in my view, you need to address both if you're going to make a really good application. And then finally, thirdly, academic quality, 10 marks. So here we go. So overall aim of project, academic quality and potential for academic impact. So what we're looking to see is, you know, the quality of the supervisors, what kind of supervision they've done before, what the units that they work within, what they're like, what kind of support, you know, are they important? The actual project itself, clarity of objectives. A question we often have, especially from the panel, is this really a PhD level project, or in fact, is it just a kind of a 10K innovation program project? Is it really that depth that needs to be for a PhD program? And also the novelty. Again, a lot of the panel often come back and say, actually, this looks like a knowledge exchange project to us. It's not really, you know, research based enough. I know it's a difficult balance, and I know that it is difficult to get this balance between getting enough research to make a good PhD project, but at the same time getting the impact from the research that's necessary. Quality of academic environment, novelty of the research. So again, we have the panel coming back and saying, okay, but we're not quite sure if this research is novel. And indeed, in previous applications rounds that we've had, when we've had actually not Ragne, but some of Ragne's colleagues on, they've actually said, well, we've seen this research elsewhere, this isn't novel. So you need to make sure and demonstrate that the research genuinely is novel. And also what's important to me is, what are the benefits to the student? How is the student going to benefit from being on this PhD program, learning skills experience? What else are they going to How else are they going to benefit? What other experiences? What other training are they going to get other than that directly related to their project? Because we know what it's like when a PhD student starts their PhD and starts working on their project. They spend all of their time focusing directly. It's actually really difficult to get them out of that box into which they put themselves in. But it is important if they want to get a wider understanding of the jobs market, but also of the sector in which they work and the environment in which they work, to make their work genuinely impactful. And finally, and again, this is one which is generally not very well answered. What is the alignment with ETP strategic framework? You can find exactly what I mean is by mission, values, vision, stuff like that. Remember that ETP is about collaborative activity. So what we want to see is, how is this project going to engage with other members from within the theme, and the theme leadership group. So if your theme is within, for example, hydrogen, so how is it going to engage with John Anderson and Katrina Edelman, who are the two leads for hydrogen? How's it going to engage with the wider theme leadership group? How's it going to engage with other ETP universities? How's it going to engage with other students? So ETP at the moment has 25 students, which is funding through the PhD program, and hopefully another 5 here. How will it engage with those other students? So it's not just about what happens within this project. So reference to ETP strategic framework, mainly collaboration. How is it going to engage with these other groups? So finally, that's it. Talk to us. So this isn't just a box now where on the 31st of August at 11:59 I received 8 or 9 applications, although that does happen. This is about two-way engagement, collaborative, okay, about how we can support each other to make sure that we get good applications that we can fund. Right, so does anybody have any final questions, either in the chat or raise your hands, please? Anything you didn't understand, anything you want clarifying? Right, I have a hand from Sunita. Hi, Sunita, do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you very well, Sunita. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So my point is the weightage of the project, other than the industry, between the co-supervisor and the lead supervisor has to be equal, or?
No, it doesn't have to be defined particularly. In the actual support, basically this means it needs a support letter saying how the co-supervisor, but no, often what happens is that there is a project meeting, maybe every 3 months, every 6 months, at which the co-supervisor attends, and then that the student has the possibility, if they want to, just talk to that co-supervisor if they want maybe a different point of view. So really, once it starts, it's really up to the project themselves to decide how that co-supervisor engages with the project.
And same for the industry also.
Yes, but I expect the engagement with the industrial to be slightly more formal than that, and I'm hoping that the industrial, because the industrial supervisor, if the industry is really committed, they will be really interested in what comes out of this project because they will be using it. So
Okay.
the industrial sponsor will be also directing where the research, or supporting their direction. So it shouldn't be directing, but helping the direction of the research, because they want to be using that research. They want to find that impactful in their own business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sunita, could you be excellent? Any questions for anyone else? So I have a question then from Theodus. Sorry, I don't know if that, hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. For the non-host university, did the partner need to be an ETP university? Preferably yes. In fact, we do have precedents where they're not, but preferably yes, from an ETP university. From Tom, hi Tom. Must the financial contributions be equal? Can we have more than one industrial sponsor? So I'm not quite sure what you mean by financial contributions, but generally, yes, we're kind of looking for a third, a third, a third. So for example, ETP would put in, as I said, a third. The host sponsor, Tom, I'm not quite sure where you're from, but let's say, for example, you're from UHI, would put in 25K, and the industrial sponsor would also put in 25k. Doesn't have to be exactly. You could have, say, 30-20 or 20-30, and that would also be acceptable. Okay, that would be fine. Remembering as well that part of the industrial contribution can be in kind. All right, so please list and add in any in-kind contributions that the industrial sponsor makes, because these are often significant. Okay, could be in equipment, could be access to data, time, personnel, and so on. These are important. Can we have more than one industry sponsor? Absolutely, yes. Quite a few of our applications actually have multiple industrial sponsors. So yes, absolutely, yes. Maurizio, hello. Can this ETP be funded 2/3 by industry and 1/3 by ETP? No, because we need to see that the host institution basically has some skin in the game. So no, that has happened in the past, and that's not seen. It doesn't mean to say that you can't have, for example, 25k from ETP, 25k from the host institution, and 50k from industry to make 100. That would be absolutely fine. But it wouldn't be acceptable to have no financial contribution from the host institution. Hope that answered the question. Let's just check that there are no more questions that I've answered on. No, I think that's it from the chat. Nobody's raised their hands that I can see. So in which case, please email me, message me. If you have any questions afterwards, I'm always open. Remember, 31st of July is draft deadline for draft applications. If you have any, please do that. Absolutely. Or have a new message down underneath. Let's see what it's about. So thank you. So Jenny is saying recording and slides from today will be circulated to all who registered. Absolutely. In that case, it just remains for me to say thank you very much for Ragne. I know that she's really busy, so thank you very much for donating your time, Ragne. And hopefully we will get hundreds of fabulous applications, and we'll have a really difficult time in deciding who to approve. Cheers, everybody.